Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As you probably know, the Arrowverse aired its final episode last week. And because of this, I've decided to rank all the main villains in the Arrowverse. There is 39 villains to rank, so it will be separated into 3 parts. The bad, the mid, and the great. With that being said, let's get into it. Just a disclaimer, this will not include the Black Lightning seasons or Superman and Lois, because, Superman and Lois isn't a part of the Arrowverse, and I haven't seen all 4 seasons of Black Lightning. Starting off the bad, we have the Fates from Legend of Tomorrow. These villains were just really random and weird. I don't know, it just is a bit strange how they used these random original characters as villains. But it just ties into the larger problem with Legends of Tomorrow, that it doesn't really feel like a DC show in its later seasons. The Fates get a 2 out of 10. Number 38 is another Legends villain, Bishop. He is just a really cringe and camp villain that doesn't compare nearly to any of the good villains in the Arrowverse. Here's another 2 out of 10 for Legends of Tomorrow. In number 37, we have the villain from the worst season of The Flash, Cicada 2.0. Grace Gibbons just didn't have enough time to develop, and her rivalry with Barry was non-existent. Her character just completely fell flat, and it made her the worst villain of the whole show. So, she gets a 3 out of 10. Number 36 is one of the most universally hated Arrowverse villains, Vandal Savage. The line delivery and accent just didn't fit this character, and him being tied to the Hawks really bring him down. He gets a 3 out of 10. In number 35 is Neron from Legends of Tomorrow Season 4. This character is from DC Comics, which makes him better than other Legends villains, but he was still kinda weird and the storyline just didn't do this character justice. His design was cool though. He gets another 3 out of 10. Number 34 is Gamemnae from Supergirl Season 5. She just didn't do it for me. She's practically an original character, since her comic counterpart is an Atlantean sorceress, and here she's the goddess of technology. There was barely any build-up to her character, and she had absolutely zero rivalry with Supergirl. She was also then just defeated in 1 minute. There was a 5-minute action sequence at the start of episode 1 of season 6, which I get they kind of had to do since they had to wrap up their storylines from season 5 and start the new ones for season 6 in that episode, but it just made the villain fall flat. She had a pretty cool design though. She gets a 3 out of 10. Number 33 is Speed Force Nora from Flash Season 7. It's just such a stupid idea to have not only the Forces as villains, but the Speed Force, where Barry gets his powers from. That just is so stupid, and it's not even from the comics. And also, the most bad part about it is that the Speed Force takes on the form of Barry's mother, and they call her Nora, even though she's evil. That's so disrespectful to Barry's mother, and the fact that Barry and Iris call her their child, it's just so weird and disgusting. She gets a 4 out of 10. Number 32 is Nixie from Supergirl Season 6. The storyline that followed her was okay, but the actress just did such a bad job. All the line delivery was cringe, and she just made me really hate her by the end of the season. It's so disappointing that she was the final main villain in Supergirl. 4 out of 10. Number 31 is Evil Gideon from Legends of Tomorrow Season 7. While the actress was compassionate, she just didn't really pull off the villain role, and she was overshined by her robot army, so she just gets a 4 out of 10 for being forgettable. Number 30 is Mallus from Legends of Tomorrow Season 3. While not a bad villain, he only had one episode where he was actually the main villain, though throughout the season he had lots of great setup that made him feel like really threatening. But since he only had one episode, you can't really put him higher than number 30. He gets a 4 out of 10. Number 29 is Rhea from Supergirl Season 2. She had a great emotional connection to Kara since she was the mother of her boyfriend, but some of the stuff near the end where she tried to get Lena to marry Mon-El, and just her motivations in general and her killing her husband, it was all just kind of weird and cringe and didn't make sense. The actress also wasn't that good. I get what they were going for, trying to get the actress of Lois Lane from the Lois and Clark show, but I feel like it would have been much better if they actually chose an actress who could, act. But also, she's an original character, which just makes her character worse. So she gets a 4 out of 10. Red Death was just a goofy joke. The writers totally missed the point of show don't tell by having her tell the audience her backstory. It also didn't help that all she did was quote old Batman lines, and she just could not pull them off. All of this comes down to two main things: the writers of The Flash and Javicia Leslie. I love Javicia on Batwoman, but she cannot play a villain. It's just really disappointing since they were one of the villains people wanted to go on the show most, and Eric Wallace disappointed us once again. Red Death gets another 4 out of 10. Number 27 is Cicada 1.0 from Flash Season 5. At the start of the season, Cicada was a pretty cool and intimidating villain. I feel like he probably had one of the better villain origin stories of the Arrowverse, but that's not saying much. Around the midpoint of the season, all his fights with Team Flash got really repetitive. It was annoying how each time he could just hop away. It was just really uncreative of the writers. And then, near the end of the season, he got killed and replaced by his much less cool niece. It just kind of felt like a waste of what could have been a good villain. He gets a 4.5 out of 10. Now, we are getting into the mid-tier of Arrowverse villains, with number 26, Non, from Supergirl Season 1. Non wasn't particularly bad, he was just a bit boring and didn't really do much. His plan was pretty good, and his final battle with Supergirl was cool, but he still just didn't really do it for me. Non gets another 4.5 out of 10. Number 25 is the Negative Forces from Flash Season 8. Again, like with the Speed Force, I just don't really agree that these forces of nature should be personified, but I think the actor for Dion did pretty cool. But when the Negative Speed Force went into Reverse Flash and they made him Negative Reverse Flash, that was just really weird, and that final fight with Barry was bad, and his suit just looked terrible. But they weren't that bad, so they just get a 4.5 out of 10. Number 24 is Godspeed from Flash Season 7. Godspeed isn't as bad as people have made him out to be, and I honestly really enjoyed that 4-episode storyline. But my problems with it were that it was only 4 episodes, which isn't enough time to do a full main villain. But he had been set up for a long time. Although I don't really agree that they should have done the clones thing since it wasn't anywhere in the comics, so I don't even know how they came up with it. Still, he deserves a 5 out of 10. Number 23 is Emiko Queen from Arrow Season 7. The whole Season 7 Emiko Queen storyline was actually really good, but the actress was just really bad, and it brought the storyline down, so she gets a 5 out of 10. For number 22, I have Mira Monarch. She's the Eric Wallace villain with the longest story arc, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Her storyline feels a bit too dragged out, and a lot of her supposed arc was filler. Her motivation was really good, but after she killed Carver, her storyline kind of fell apart. She became kind of just a I want to end the world villain. Her costume wasn't that great, but the actress Ephrat Dor did a pretty good job. So, Mirror Monarch gets a 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Black Mask from Batwoman Season 2. He was a good, threatening villain who had a good connection to the Bat team because he was the one who was holding Kate Kane hostage. It's unfortunate that he was caught up in all the Kate Kane and Ruby Rose drama, because he could have been one of the better main villains if he wasn't. He was also a little bit campy, but less campy than the Black Mask from the Birds of Prey movie. So, Black Mask gets a 6 out of 10. Number 20 is Marcus Jet, aka Joker 2.0. He's Ryan Wilder's Alice, being her brother, which makes for a really interesting connection between the main hero and main villain. Nick Cregan plays him fairly well, though the performance is kinda camp, but he also had a nice connection to Alice with him being on that bus that drove her off the road and made her become the villain who she is. So that was pretty cool. So he gets a 6 out of 10. Number 19 is Ricardo Diaz from Arrow Season 6. I feel like he was pretty good, but he just didn't have that rivalry with Oliver that characters like Slade Wilson and Adrian Chase did. His backstory in that dragon episode was really cool though, and it made me like his character so much. So that's why he's number 19. And why he gets a 6 out of 10. Number 18 is the final main villain of The Flash and the Arrowverse, Cobalt Blue, aka Eddie Thawne. He was a pretty intimidating and cool villain who was well acted by Rick Cosnett, but he fails because he did not get enough time. He only got 4 episodes and was only the main villain for one of them. His suit looks really cool though. Cobalt Blue gets a 7 out of 10. Number 17 is the villain from the most overhated season of the Arrowverse, Damien Darkh from Arrow Season 4. He was a really good and threatening villain, who was played perfectly by Neil McDonough. Though his performance was a little campy, it felt in character and it was a breath of fresh air from what Arrow had done in the past. He didn't really have motives, but he was still a pretty cool villain, so he gets a 7 out of 10. In number 16, we have Eric Wallace's third best villain, Deathstorm. This whole arc was almost perfectly executed, with the evolution from Deathstorm being the black flame who was targeting people who had grief, to this big figure that was perfectly created in CGI. There was a strong emotional connection to Team Flash since he used Ronnie's body, and that whole resurrection episode where Caitlin was torn between what to do about Ronnie was actually, really cool. My main gripe with this character was that he was defeated in 1 minute, not even by Flash, but by Frost, but it was still a pretty cool action sequence, and he was just a good villain in general. So, he gets a 7 out of 10. Number 15 is Ra's al Ghul from Arrow Season 3. He was a good and threatening interpretation of this iconic Batman villain, but one of the problems was that he's a Batman villain, and Oliver Queen just took over his story, when there's plenty of Green Arrow villains this show could have used. But he was still a good interpretation, so he gets a 7 out of 10. Despero is one of the rare villains that Eric Wallace did right. He has one of the best villain motivations in the whole Arrowverse because he's not really a villain. He's just trying to protect Earth, and if that means taking one life away, then he thinks that's worth it. His CGI design was really cool, and Tony Curran actually did a really good job playing this character. He got ruined a bit in the end, but he still gets a 7 out of 10. Number 13, Savitar, was hated when his season was first premiering, but now is looked back as one of the best villains in the Arrowverse. He had the closest connection to the main hero out of any of these villains because he was the main hero. His suit design is really cool, and I really like the whole cult resurrecting Dr. Alchemy thing that they did near the start, and was disappointed that kind of went away later in the season. The Savitar reveal was a bit too late in the season, but I still think he made for a very compelling villain. So he gets a 7 out of 10. Alice from Batwoman Season 1 is in 12th place because she's just such a fun character. Her rivalry with Kate is just pure sibling madness, and it's just kinda cool. Rachel Scarston pulls off this crazy character really perfectly, and I'm really glad she stuck around for more than one season. She gets a 7.5 out of 10. Number 11 is the best villains from Legends of Tomorrow from the best season of Legends of Tomorrow, the Legion of Doom from Season 2. It was so cool seeing some of the main villains from across the Arrowverse work together to make this team. And the interactions that came out of it were just so cool and funny. The Spear of Destiny plot was just such a fun adventure to go on, and they really made it great, so they get a 7.5 out of 10. Now moving into the top 10, we have number 10, Lex Luthor from Supergirl Season 4. While only in 3 episodes, John Cryer still managed to capture the audience's hearts with his comic-accurate and charming portrayal of Lex Luthor. His Lexo suit was really cool, and he had a good connection to Kara and Lena, who are 2 of the main characters on this show. Lex Luthor gets an 8 out of 10. Number 9 is Malcolm Merlyn, aka the Dark Archer. John Barrowman is very charismatic in this role, and his motivation was heartbreaking and well acted. He had a good personal connection to Oliver via his friend Tommy, but he ended up killing Tommy in the end accidentally, which was kind of depressing, but still, 8 out of 10. Number 8 is Rain from Supergirl Season 3. I liked how she was built up a lot, which hadn't been done on Supergirl yet. She had a personal connection to Kara, not only being Kryptonian, but also being her friend. And she also was extremely powerful and kind of scary. Her connection with her daughter Ruby was really sweet, and the actress really acted her heart out. She's definitely the best Supergirl villain, 8.5 out of 10. Number 7 is by far the best Eric Wallace villain, Ramsey Rosso, aka Bloodwork. Senhil Ramaherthy knocked it out of the park. I really felt something and connected with him, even when he was full villain. His integration into the Crisis setup was really great, and he was just a really good and well done villain. So he gets a 9 out of 10. Number 6 is my favourite Batwoman villain, and is also my favourite Batman villain from the comics, Poison Ivy. I'm a big Bridget Regan fan from Jane the Virgin, so seeing her step into this role was amazing. And she's perfectly casted. I love this new dark take on Poison Ivy, and her chemistry with Montoya was off the charts. I loved how her storyline was built up throughout the season with a new layer coming in each episode, and how she infected Mary to become her little sporling. The main problem is that she was defeated in episode 10, which was a bit too early, and I just loved her so much that I think she should have had more episodes. But still, she gets a 9 out of 10. Starting off the top 5, we have Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke. I loved how he was built up throughout the whole season, and how he was connected to the first villain of the season, Brother Blood. The whole promise thing is just peak Arrowverse writing, and his motivation with Shadow was just really moving. In all action scenes, Slade was a badass, and I'm just really glad we got to see him here on the small screen. He gets a 9 out of 10. Number 4 is Zoom, aka Hunter Zolomon, the scariest Arrowverse villain. He genuinely felt like a threat, and it's so cool when he kills those cops. The whole exploration of the multiverse in Earth 2, it was all great, but it was a bit repetitive how he was Jay Garrick and pretending to be someone in Team Flash, because that's what Thorne did in Season 1, but it's funny how they mentioned it in Season 9, but so he gets a 9 out of 10. Now in the top 3, we have Welsabard, Eobard, Thorne, Reverse Flash. This is just pure comic bookiness. I love how it's slowly revealed over time that he's the Reverse Flash, and the whole wheelchair thing and possession, and it just makes me happy when thinking about it. And it kind of makes me sad that Flash now is nowhere near as good as the mystery of this. So yeah, he gets a 9 out of 10. This may come as a shock to many, but in number 2, I have the Thinker, played by Neil Sandilands. He had the best villain plan in the whole universe, with all the bus metas and absorbing their powers, and he just really worked for me as a villain. Season 4 is by no means the best Arrowverse season, but the Thinker is definitely one of the best villains in the Arrowverse. He gets a 9 out of 10. Now, for the one you've all been waiting for, the best villain in the whole Arrowverse is Prometheus, aka Adrian Chase, aka Simon Morrison, played perfectly by Josh Cicada. He encapsulates all of what a main villain should be: threatening, personal, and badass. His emotional connection to Oliver is amazing, and Lian Yu is just perfection, and that's in large part due towards Prometheus. His plan in the end just gets so good, and I just love Prometheus, so he gets a 9 out of 10. I've calculated the average of all these rankings, and it brings the Arrowverse main villains to a ranking of 5.9 out of 10, which is probably fair. This universe has produced some of the greatest superhero villains of all time, but also has some pretty terrible ones. So, that was my ranking of all the Arrowverse main villains. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more fun videos like this, including my Little Mermaid review, which will be up this week. Have a great day!